Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video we're going to be doing something a bit different. It isn't going to be one of my typical gameplay videos. It is going to be my thoughts on Act 6 champion restriction and more so the way Kabam is handling it. So first things first, I do not agree with it. I do not think it was needed. I think it's fairly misrepresented idea. I can understand to a degree why they want to limit the champions that we take in the quests, and you can take an example of variant. It was restricted to 2 classes per chapter and we were kind of fine with it. There wasn't a massive uproar. It also restricted our synergies. It did kind of like prohibit us to counter specific champions, because often you can find more counters in one specific class, and in this case we weren't allowed to use them in many situations where we would have wanted it to. But regardless, community received it much better. So here is the number one point which we need to take it, that it was utterly misrepresented. We only got given 1 week's notice to kind of like get on board with these newly introduced champion restrictions, and that instantly hits people a lot harder than if we had like a month or two to prepare. To add an insult to an injury, Kabam has been extensively selling 4-star rank up bundles and kind of still pretending they are super relevant, which they have been up until now. And that's kind of like my point of the channel, and that's one of the reasons why it like frustrated me so much. Like, because honestly, for me personally as a player in the game, this restriction of 4 stars doesn't really kind of come in play. Only thing I can mention that it's gonna annoy me most is probably gonna be Heimdall, because I don't have a 5 or 6 star Heimdall. But apart from that, I'm gonna be fine. But in terms of me as a content creator and for my channel, that's an awful thing, because I have kind of been basing it on my channel on using 4-star champions to clear the more difficult content in the game. So that's definitely not good. But to carrying on, so first things first, I think the biggest issue is misrepresentation. Just like with 12.0, they dropped it too sudden, nothing was open for negotiation, and it was kind of like, it's happening now, you get on with it, or, well, you have to get on with it. And that is the biggest issue here. But moving on, like my personal thoughts, because if they are so adamant that they do want these champion restrictions in the game, and that is where they have been going with it. First instances were showing in 5.3, where they halved the damage of every other class apart from 1. We could still use other class champions, but the damage was halved, so that was like a huge hindrance. So that was the first step toward that. And then they had these daily events, and now there's Nick Fury Recon initiatives where they're limiting it to certain tags of the champions. And obviously we have the variant where it's limited by the classes. All that does not really hit the mid-tier player as badly and as alarmingly as simply flat out unrolling 4-star champions. So what I think they should have done, and what would make a lot more sense, at least to me, and I have been giving it quite a bit of thought, it would also be good business practice for them. If they wanted to introduce these champion restrictions by classes, which is fair enough, then why don't they start by saying only 3-star champions are allowed in 6.1? Tune the content difficulty accordingly, and then in 6.2 they can announce that it's only going to be 4-star champions, give us time to prepare for it. 6.3 they give us like 5-star champions, and 6.4 they go like all champions go, or like 5 and 6-star champions go, and like full steam ahead. And if they had done this, community I think would have been like kind of eased into it, and I think it would be also quite clever tactic from them, because all of us have loads of 3-star champions, whether they're currently ranked up or not. That's one thing, but I think Kabam could easily fix that by sprinkling in some 3-star rank up gems in past month heroic and collected quests and so on, and make those gems available. And let's face it, ranking up a 3-star champion isn't like all that difficult. So long as we are given a month or so advance notice, we could amount decent amount of maxed out 3-star champions for this content. That would also benefit them from business point of view, because if they introduce any new champions that people think could potentially help them in endgame content, like as in let's say this 6.1, which would have been limited to the 3-star champions, then these people would have much more likely be grinding arenas or even buying some featured Grandmaster crystals. Because if you open a couple of featured Grandmaster crystals, you do not really expect or hope for the 5-star, right? So many people don't even kind of like try or bother, because 3 or 4-star champions for many of us are irrelevant. But if they made this kind of a restriction in the game, then many people who wouldn't otherwise spend the money because they realize they can't compete with the huge spenders in the game, probably would try their luck by getting new 3-star champions. That would also put everybody pretty much on a level playing field and play setting initially for the first chapters. And I think community would open that with wide arms. I don't think endgame players would protest against that as well, because they would know that it's only for the first chapters, and that's how people are getting eased into it. And then it would be essentially put purely skill-based kind of content. Also, Legends runs would be flat-out skill land, because everybody can pretty much get majority of the 3-stars in the game. Like, okay, everybody, I might be exaggerating, but it is a lot easier to get 3-star champions. And then they could do the same announcement for 4-star champions for 6.2. It's also not a big deal. Give us time to prepare. We're going to rank up the 4-star champions we have to rank up. Kabam can also probably release some offers, or just in general release some rank up gems in the content we do daily already to kind of help the players out to get there. And then again, it would be like a similar race for the first couple of chapters. Like, obviously we do not want any kind of newer and very low level players doing Act 6. So you can put a baseline flat out gate saying like 5.4 has to be 100%. And that would serve as a restriction enough. And also, I think then they shouldn't have brought the new title, which essentially seems to be something similar that Uncollected has been, straight out to 6.1. They should have done it in like 6.3. Because then the first 2 chapters, you would still get the chapter rewards, but it wouldn't end up kind of like giving you all this new stuff and easy access to 6-stars and so on. Because then the content you finish with 3 or 4 stars would give you the reward, would give you a chance to compete, would kind of like give you a feel for the new nodes. You could easily tune it to be like extremely skill-based content as well, like, because if all of us are given essentially same tools to work with. And then in chapter 3 and 4, you can put on the new title, which gives another set of privileges to the players and another kind of like huge milestone to work for. So that's one thing that I'm thinking what they should have done. They would have gotten plenty of money and sales from that as well, and community would be much more pleased with that kind of restriction. And eventually they would have gotten to the same end goal where they wanted to go. It's just that we would have been eased into it by essentially having fully functional rosters under the restrictions, because 3 and 4-star champions are easier to get. And then when it gets to the very end game of Act 6, kind of like the very end chapters, then it would be kind of like survival as the fittest, and your 5-star rosters and all that stuff comes into play. And we would have had time to prepare and kind of process all that. So another thing, I think there is still a good way out for Kabam from this whole mess that they have gotten themselves into, and to kind of like please the community, because let's face it, Kabam is a fairly stubborn company. They very rarely kind of like change their mind about the decision or strategy they have made to, and I don't think it's realistic to expect for them to remove this 4-star ban. So I think they can still save the situation by announcing like a simply new in-game item, which isn't like a hard thing to do or code. They have done it multiple times for smaller monthly quests and stuff like that. And I think though the basic idea of this new in-game item would be that it would be boost of a sort that would increase the star level of one of your champions for a set amount of time by 1. And to make these like fairly inexpensive, fairly easily accessible, obviously with some sort of limits, that's something they would have to work out. But in that case, we're still going to be restricted to the 5-star champions, but the most important synergy pieces, the most important utility pieces, we could still use this boost on. We could still take in our 4-star, get that path done, and then move on to the next one. Obviously, I do, knowing Kabam, they would like charge units or something like that. What I have in my mind is that they would like cost fairly inexpensive amount of gold, but there would be like a daily limit to how many you can purchase these, or something along those lines. So I think then if they would let us, through this new method, take in a select amount of 4-stars, rather than just use 4-star full roster, players would have been kind of met halfway. Because that is what everybody's protesting about essentially, is that I have many of my utility champions as 4-stars, or I have my synergy pieces missing, or there are some 4-stars that haven't even been released as 5-stars that are vital for synergies. And fair enough, just release this kind of item and you're gonna be fine. Like, you can still take in your synergies, you can still get your utility pieces, you can get through the content using your 4-star champions. And I think that would be probably the best kind of solution Kabam can find currently without changing too much in their strategy for now. Obviously, I don't know what kind of plans they have exactly for the following chapters, but I think that would be a kind of fairly safe and decent way to go on. And most importantly, an opportunity from Kabam to show that they are listening to their player base. And last two things I want to talk about really quickly is, regardless of what you think about the 6-star ban, the 4-star ban in Act 6, I do urge everybody to stay at least somewhat respectful. If you want to be sarcastic, be sarcastic. If you want to be smartass, be smartass. But when it comes to like kind of direct personal attacks towards people and individuals, especially to Kabam employees and forum moderators, that's just kind of like not all right, because you need to realize that's not the decisions they have made. You will never ever speak to the person who has made these decisions or who is in charge of these strategies. The forum mods are essentially just doing their best to put out the fires. Whether I think they're doing good or bad job, no, like hell no. They have been failing a lot and hard. But at the same time, it's not really their decisions and their responsibilities. So I just think that we all should kind of like cool down a bit. And if you want to post something, post something. If you want to be smart about it, be smart about it. Sarcastic, sure, make memes, go. That's all cool. But just kind of like stay away from all the wild and personal kind of things, because nobody wants to experience that in their workplace. Especially, like, what's the best comparison is, imagine somebody working at McDonald's and they have like hard or bad job as it is, and then you as a customer start yelling at them for, I don't know, McDonald's new price policy or the fact that they don't sell McNuggets anymore or whatever. It's not their decision. They're just there to inform you or kind of like respond to you what they have been told. They do not make any of those decisions. And I know it's easy to forget. We need somebody to let our anger out, but just kind of like be reasonable with it. I'm not saying like you can't have fun or anything like that. Obviously, if you like trolling, go troll. Just kind of like don't overdo it. And last thing I wanted to talk about is today's offers. Today's offers, when I saw them, they proper kind of like made me giggle so hard. Like, so to get it like completely straight, last offer they put out was for $99, which had like good amount of tier 2 alpha in it, 13.5k tier 5 basics in it, and just after banning 4-stars from 6.1, they're releasing a bundle that lets us max out a 4-star for $150, like essentially $100 and $50. And so here are two things. I do understand that these offers are planned in a month in advance, right? So it wasn't like that was Kabam taking a piss out of player base. It was, if anything, more of an like really, really funny and unfortunate kind of like coincidence. However, I'm just still surprised that after everything that has been happening within last week in the community, that nobody in the office kind of looked at this offer and said like, maybe we should hold this one back for now. Like literally there was not a single person who kind of figured out to speak up and say like, I don't think this offer is a good idea, like, because maybe this isn't the time to do it. And yes, I do understand these offers are not meant for endgame players. These offers are meant for like medium to low level players. However, here are the two things. One is the timing, and timing is really important, especially in kind of like gaming world. And this is really bad timing for anything like that. When you make such an announcement, they need to be really careful not to like infuriate people even more. And that within minutes of this offer popping up, there were like several videos on YouTube and dozens of threads on forums, and everybody just feels that Kabam's taking a piss out of them, which in fact they're not. Like, let's face it, they're not. These offers are scheduled a month and ahead, and it wasn't like a response for our concerns at Kabam. Somebody in Kabam said like, you know what, let's piss them off even more. If anything, this is just like a coincidence, but a really funny one. And it is like fairly in bad tact, just somebody dropping a ball, not paying attention. And the biggest mess up here is that nobody in Kabam kind of like stood up and said like, maybe let's not release this offer today. But aside from that, I think that will do for this video. I hope you guys don't eat me alive for this. And as a quick summary, that yes, I disagree with what Kabam is doing. Definitely do. I'm not a fan of it. However, that is well within their rights as a gaming company. But I find the biggest issue with not what they're doing, it's with the methods, how they are doing it. They're being far too secretive. They do not give players any kind of notice. And to me at this point, it almost seems that they're kind of like doing it on purpose, or it's really hard to explain, but it just seems extremely short-sighted. Because it's like, how can you be so bad at presenting major content and major changes in your game time and time again afterwards? Because this is these stupid things that's happening right now, and it's going to be a major hindrance. But it could have been presented so much better, and without this whole uproar. Like variant, we had class restrictions, nobody shouted about it. Not really, kind of. And yeah, I hope somebody, possibly, from Kabam, I mean, like, I'm not being optimistic, or I do not have any huge hopes for it, but I still do think that my idea, which I said about releasing a new in-game item or boost that would increase 1 4-stars level by 1 for a certain amount of time, and having these items sprinkled throughout the content, would kind of mediate a lot of the tension and the anger in the community, and would help us kind of like feel that Kabam is taking a step to meet us halfway. And I think that the majority of the people who are raging right now would lose kind of like their biggest reasons to rage, because currently, as far as I'm hearing, it is the synergies and the utility champions. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and that's gonna be it for me now, and I'm gonna see you guys next time.